Hello, my name is Dale Erickson, and today I'm presenting a case of a guardian of a student whose initials are LB versus the Toronto District School Board. The original article was written by Karen Enslin, and I'll go into the case. The presentation of the case that I'm going to share is the situation itself, the context, the case, the outcome, the wonderings, the Alberta context, the conclusion, and the references. So I just want to take a look at the case, and then a couple questions that I had after it, and then I wanted to see what Alberta context in terms of documents relevant to the case we had here where I am. So the situation, LB was diagnosed in grade 2 with learning disability, general anxiety disorder, social anxiety disorder, and oppositional defiant disorder. He was reassessed in grade 8 and diagnosed with ADHD and general anxiety disorder, and it was noted that he continued presenting with learning disability in the areas of working memory and processing speed. His grade 8 year, he had attended the same school from the beginning of his schooling right up until grade 8. He was placed in an inclusive classroom and received supports according to his individual education plan. His attendance became a concern in grade 8, and a teacher actually volunteered to go to his house each morning to encourage him to come to school. So the school ended at grade 8, and his grade 8 team created a transition plan to inform the secondary school of his needs, where he would be attending grade 9 in the following year. His grade 9 year, the team created an IEP in October, but made no mention of the attendance concerns or specific transition needs that the grade 8 team had shared. His IEP recommended that he receive support from an educational assistant. He was assigned a peer tutor. The mother requested he receive a referral to a social worker or an attendance counselor, and she made that request on the second week of school. LB's attendance worsened, and he essentially stopped attending school, and at that point the mother met with the school to say that she was looking at other schooling options. What actually happened in grade 9 that led up to that, the referral to the social worker was not made until January. He was not seen by a social worker, attendance counselor, or psychologist at any time throughout his grade 9 year. He was not referred to in-school support team until March, and school administrators, guidance counselors, special education teachers did not review the psychologist reports from grade 8 at all. And the school board operates alternative schools, including schools and treatment facilities. And the province ran a demonstration school for students learning disabilities and ADHD, specifically for those needs. However, these schooling options were not shared or mentioned to LB's mom, even at the point where she was looking at other schooling options. The case went to a human rights tribunal, and they found that the board discriminated against LB on the basis of failing to accommodate his disability. The tribunal termed the conduct discrimination through omission, and failures of the board that they noted included delay in providing services of a social worker, attendance counselor, or a psychologist. They did not pursue additional supports. They failed to recommend alternative schooling options to mom. They failed to review psychologist reports. They failed to have circumstances addressed by the in-school support team, and this led to a breach of the Human Rights Code. So for the outcome, the tribunal awarded damages of $35,000 for the board's failure to provide support set out in the student's IEP. This had me wondering a couple of things. One of those was, do teachers really know that IEPs are legal documents? In my experience, IEPs can be, they're not always, but can be a job that is just checked off a list at the beginning of the year and reviewed when parents need to re-sign the document. And sometimes the weight of that actually being a legal document isn't truly realized. And we throw around terms like IEPs are legal documents and we need to follow through on them. But this really shone light onto what that actually means in practice when we don't follow through on what we say we're going to do in the IEP. And my other thought was, do schools have transition plans in place to ensure things like psychologist reports do not get missed? That was one of the key findings in this case, was that the psychologist report wasn't read by anybody in the transition plan. So it just made me really want to look at our own school and our own context and see what formal transition plans we do so things like that won't happen. In terms of an Alberta context, I wanted to look at the documents that kind of address this. And from the Alberta Education Act, the government of Alberta recognized the importance of an inclusive education system that provides each student with relevant learning opportunities and supports necessary to achieve success. From the Alberta Teacher Quality Standards, it's also mentioned in there that teachers provide learning environments that are inclusive, where diversity is respected and everybody is welcomed and cared for. The Alberta Teacher Quality Standard also says that establishing inclusive environments a teacher establishes, promotes, and sustains inclusive learning environments where diversity is embraced and every student is welcome, cared for, respected, and safe. And achievement of this competency is demonstrated by indicators such as, and there's a few indicators, but the one that I pulled from there for this is one indicator is that the rights identified in the Human Rights Act and the Charter of Rights and Freedom are honored. So it's very clearly set out that there is a legal requirement for us to honor the Human Rights Act, Charter of Rights and Freedoms, and that's set out right in the documents that guide practice in Alberta, as I'm sure it is in other provinces or all provinces. So the conclusions that I came to was schools must utilize the resources they have to accommodate the needs of all students. There's a high level standard placed on schools to accommodate students with disabilities, and schools can be held accountable for not following through on students' IEP documents. And with that, I'm just going to show the references page and stop my recording.